I'll start again. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Princeton Zoning Board of Adjustment being held on Wednesday, April 24th, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. in the Municipal Complex. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meeting Act, adequate notice of the time and place of this regular meeting has been provided by prominently displaying the schedule of regular meetings on the official notice board in the Municipal Complex and by transmitting a copy of this schedule to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, Trenton Times, the Trentonian, and to Comcast Cable of New Jersey. A copy was also filed with the Clerk of Princeton. Call the roll, Claudia.
Chairman Cohen.
Here.
Mr. Cohen. Ms. Colson. Here. Mr. Davitt.
Here.
Mr. Floyd.
Here.
Mrs. Shriver.
Here.
Mr. Tenenbaum. Mr. Valvanis.
Here.
Ms. Chen. Ms. Perron-Lambrose.
Here.
Mr. Stein. Thank you.
All right. We're going to hold the minutes of, of December 12th till the next meeting. They're not completed yet. So let's start with resolutions. The first one is 415 Franklin Avenue, Block 7310, Lot 14, in the R7 zone. A copy of these, this resolution was in your packet. Was
Board
anybody-
members, I think there was a revised one that was emailed subsequently. No? No? Okay. I can highlight for you then the changes
Now
that
it's
were
working.
circulated to you. Can everybody hear me? Not really? Okay. All right. All right, the changes that were circulated to you for your consideration. Paragraph 10, which is page 3. Two sentences we're adding indicating that Mr. Kyle testified about Exhibit A2, which was a photo of 377, 381 Franklin Avenue. And the other suggested change was on page 4, paragraph 6. I think your draft indicates that his testimony was the garage relocation is consistent with the configuration on a number of other properties, and I revised that to just a neighboring property because I think that's more accurate. And then finally, just page 5. It's the last paragraph. Now, therefore, you may recall our zoning officer's memo described the addition as generally 36 square feet. Apparently, though, the plans actually reflected 39 square feet, and that is also how everything else was calculated, the variances they needed. So the applicant had requested, can we make it 39 square feet, because that is what we submitted to you. So those are the changes that I had proposed to you from the resolution that was in your package.
Okay.
So Karen, are you saying that this is that the 36 was a typo, or that,
Well,
what do you mean exactly, that they,
Okay,
what we looked at was,
It was hard to tell off his... On 30, I mean, it's 3 feet. It's de minimis. And it's tough to scale something that's that narrow, and the dimensions weren't on it, so I'm fine with 39.
So when Derek looked at the application, he scaled it himself by measuring, and what he measured was, since the area is very small for that connection between the garage and the house, his measurements came out to approximately 36 square feet, but apparently the plans that were submitted were 39 square feet, and the distances and the variances they asked for were all based on 39 square feet. So the applicant's attorney raised it with me, and I said, well, I will present it to the board and ask them if they will consider that.
Okay. Does anyone have any comments on this? Is this alternative, is it acceptable?
Yes.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion on the resolution?
I guess I would move to approve this resolution with the corrections or the,
Eve, you'll remember, there were a number of motions because there
Oh,
were
yeah.
a number of variances. So since you and Steve voted no on some of them, I think the better way to proceed would be, we need somebody who voted in favor of the entire package of variances to move the resolution. And those people would be, to make it easier, would be Mr. Floyd, Mr. Schreiber, Mr. Stein, or Ms. Lampros.
Okay. Can I make a motion then to approve with the changes?
Do we have a second? Okay. Claudia?
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mrs. Shriver?
Yes.
Ms. Perrin-Lambros?
Yes.
Mr. Stein?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. The next resolution is file number Z1818-683, 4 Hawthorne Avenue, Block 2302, Lot 16. Ann Kennedy, owner applicant. Karen, are there any issues with this?
No.
Okay. Has everybody looked at this? Anybody like to make a motion on this?
I move we accept it.
Second?
Second.
All right. Claudia?
One second. Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Coulson?
yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Okay, our
Ms.
last,
Perrin-Lambros, one second.
Yes.
Thank you.
And did you get Mr. Stein, Claudia?
Mr. Stein?
Yes.
Thank you.
on our last resolution of the evening, file number Z1818-683. This has the same, they all have the same file number?
It shouldn't. Let's see.
The last one was 683, this one's 683 also.
Then that's a mistake. 6-2? Okay. 662. Okay.
Which
The
one?
agen-
I think you,
Chair, the agenda has the right numbers on it,
Okay,
so if you refer to
okay. All right, so this one is actually Z1818-662. Okay, and it is for 1107 Great Road, Block 2001, Lot 26, in the RA zone.
I move to accept.
Second.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Coulson?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver,
Yes.
Ms. Spiron Lambros,
Yes.
Mr. Stein.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, now, the applications. The first one, which has been carried for several hearings, is 394 Ridgeview Road, Z1818-652, Block 2201, Lot 22 in the RA zone. I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. Again, my name is John Dumont, and I'm the attorney for the applicant, Ridgeview Properties, and you are correct, Mr. Chairman, that it has been several months since we have been here before the board, and we appreciate the fact that you have carried this application for several months. I just wanted to take a minute to just sort of review what where this application started and where we are now, because I think we have a very positive result, but
Bring the microphone closer to you.
okay.
If you can.
So, again, this is 394 Ridgeview Road. This property is in the RA zone. That's 4-acre zoning. And the reason that we are here is that this lot is 3 acres. This lot was originally part of an 11-acre lot back in 1976 when Dr. Letty bought the property. Dr. Letty then subdivided the property into 2 4-acre lots and 1 3-acre lot. In 1983, the township changed the zoning from 3-acre to 4-acre, and that's what made this lot non-conforming. But then in 2003, there was an application before this board to approve the 3-acre lot for building a single-family home on the property, and that application was approved. But the applicant never proceeded to get a construction permit to build the house, so the variance that they got in 2003 expired. Now, this lot is sort of irregular in shape. There are extensive wetlands on the property, and those wetlands have been delineated by the DEP, but there is a small portion of the property which is buildable. Probably 80% of the lot is in wetlands. But the building and the area where construction could take place would not affect or disturb the wetlands in any way. The neighborhood is all residential. There are many 3-acre lots around in the same residential area, and we feel that's consistent with the zoning, which is residential. So what we have done is we have then went to their neighbors to see if we could buy any land from them to make this lot conforming. We had no interest and nobody was interested in selling. We then offered to buy lots from other property owners that adjoined this property, and they too declined. But we were fortunate in that we had a group from the Friends of Princeton Open Space and Ridgeview Conservancy and the Princeton the watershed, who came to us and said they were interested in buying the property if we would be interested in selling. So we have had discussions over this many months about how to structure this particular arrangement, and we have come to an option agreement which has been signed by all the parties. And basically, the option agreement gives this organization, they call themselves a consortium. We have given them 9 months to raise funds to buy the property. We have agreed to limit the size of any house that would be built on the property to 3,900 square feet. We have agreed to a limit on impervious surface of 5,900 5,870 feet. I'm going to make sure I have that number right. 5,780, thank you, Derek. And we've also agreed to, when we construct the house, that it will not, the headlights of the cars coming into our property will not reflect on the adjoining property. We've also made some provisions for stormwater management on the property. So this is the agreement that we have with the consortium, and we would agree that those conditions that I just just recited this minute, would be incorporated into a resolution as part of the variance if you should approve it. Obviously, we hope that you will, because we think this is a good result for both the property owner and for the community. It really defines the zoning a lot more closely than if there was none of these restrictions on the property. So tonight, we are asking for this variance approval with the conditions that I have mentioned. And that's where we are.
I'm sorry, what was this maximum square footage you've agreed to?
3,900.
3,900. Okay. Anything else? Is that your...
The impervious surface was 5,780 square feet.
Right, okay.
Mr. Dumont, one question for you. You referenced certain stormwater management aspects that you agreed to with the neighbors. Ordinarily, the board's resolution provides that the municipal engineer needs to review it to confirm that it meets, stormwater management standards for the town. Is that satisfactory to you and the neighbors, or are you looking for something else in this
Yes, I mean, we would
resolution?
comply with whatever the township
Okay.
requires in that regard. We're not looking for a variance or anything in that regard.
Okay. Is that,
That's questions from the board or from the
does
public?
anybody have any questions of the applicant?
Has has the option agreement been submitted to the town in writing? Have we seen it?
It is in writing, and it's been signed by all the parties.
The question was, has it been submitted? You're submitting testimony now. Is the underlying agreement been submitted to the town?
Mr. Floyd, I do have a copy. Did it change,
Thank you.
Mr.
That's
Dumont?
the statement that the,
Oh, that was a letter of intent.
right,
Okay.
but we can provide a copy of the option agreement if you wish. That's not a problem.
And is there anyone from the consortium that can confirm this?
Mike?
Good evening. My name is Mike Pissarro. I'm the policy director for the Watershed Institute.
Mr. Pissarro, we'll just swear you in. Do you swear affirm your testimony this evening will be truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
So we have an option agreement. The conditions Mr. Dumont has laid out were part of the agreement. I'm not sure if there's additional questions. We did have all the parties sign it as of this afternoon.
When is the 9 months, there's 9 months for this to come to fruition? If it does, when is that from? Is that from,
That's just a negotiated item that they felt they needed that much time.
no, but when is the start date of that 9 months?
From the date of this agreement.
The date of the
Today.
agreement, okay. Okay.
You're not looking for any of that to be in the resolution, correct? That option agreement is between the consortium and your client.
Correct.
Okay.
The one condition that it is on The one condition that we did ask, and which was part of the option agreement, for the variance to have the limitation for the square footage and for the impervious cover.
Okay. Just as a question, the original application, what was the size of the house originally? And what was the impervious coverage originally?
You want to-
Would you like to testify?
Sir, we'll swear you in. Do you swear affirm your testimony this evening will be truthful?
Yes, I do. The original house is 5,000 square feet.
Okay.
So we reduced down to 3,900 instead.
And what was the impervious coverage originally?
It's, I don't remember, probably 5,800 something.
So it's slightly down?
Yeah,
in
the
this-
impervious
okay.
is slightly
But
down.
the square footage of the house has been reduced a lot?
Yes.
Okay.
We don't have the exact impervious number because in order to calculate that, engineer need the new architecture plan. So the number just
But it's
will
not
come
going to,
down,
it's
but-
not going to exceed 5,780?
Yes.
And we're at 3,900 square feet?
Yeah, that's
Fine.
correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the house is being redesigned from what we had originally seen? The design of the house is completely different?
It will be different, but we don't have the new architect plan. We
Right.
just agreed to reduce the floor area from
Okay.
5,000 down to below 4,000.
Right. And what type of stormwater management are you looking to do? Just whatever's most expedient, or you're looking to do something a little more sensitive to the site?
I'm sorry, say again?
You're looking to do something, just what's most expedient to you as far as stormwater management? Like just doing a dry well, or you're looking to do something that's a little more sensitive to the site? Seeing it's on a wetland, it might be nice to do something a little bit more holistic than just
We will
standard
follow
stormwater.
whatever the township's guidance, the best practice for the stormwater management practice.
Okay.
Okay. Is that it? Any comments from the board? Yes?
Yeah, I have a question about the agreement. Is there a sunset provision in it, or is it essentially eternal?
If the option should not be exercised, those restrictions that I previously mentioned would still, if they're incorporated into the variance, would still run with the land and would still be binding.
Thank you.
Okay.
So let me explain the option agreement. Basically, we tried our best to cooperate with the neighbor consortium. So this operation agreement is negotiated between the both sides, and the principle behind this operating agreement is give the neighbor consortium 270 days to allow them to apply and get the funding from the various many different sources. So during this option period, we are not going to, we cannot apply any construction permit. So the neighbor consortium are protected. And then after these 270 days expired, we can go ahead to apply for the construction permit. So by doing that way, the neighbor consortium will have enough time to apply the funding. And also, we are, as a owner, seller, we are protected because within the 1 year period, this variance is only good for the 1 year. So after 1 year, if we don't apply for the construction permit, the variance will expire.
Okay. All right. And we have to, if we approve this evening, we don't have to take any more action on this at that point. I mean, whatever happened, the agreement is separate from our approval,
Correct,
and it doesn't, okay,
correct.
all right. Any other questions? Okay.
So,
Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak to this issue?
Hi, my name's Patricia Shanley,
Ridgeview Road?
Everidge Road.
And Ms. Shanley, do you swear or affirm any testimony you give this evening will be truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, you've patiently listened to us for a number of times, and today I'm speaking as a representative of the nonprofit Ridgeview Conservancy. So as community members, we are grateful the zoning board listened to our concerns at previous meetings regarding the proposed development at 394 Ridgeview Road, and offered us the time and opportunity to reach an amicable accord with the owner. During the last few months, we have created a consortium of organizations, including the Watershed Institute, the Friends of Princeton Open Space, the Municipality of Princeton, and Ridgeview Conservancy. During this time, the Princeton Environmental Council, the Watershed Institute, Friends of Princeton Open Space, and Princeton Town Council have each passed resolutions supporting the conservation of Block 2001, Lot 22, 394 Ridgeview Road. Together, we've engaged in good faith negotiations with the owner and have arrived at a purchase option agreement. We thank the members of the zoning board greatly for hearing us and for giving us the time needed to negotiate this accord. We also sincerely thank the owner for his openness to discuss the benefits of conserving the wetland and for coming to an amicable agreement. So thank you all very much. We're very grateful because we realize this has been a laborious, time-consuming process. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, I think we're closing the public portion of the hearing. We'll go into an executive session.
Board members, I just want to remind everyone, since the testimony on the application was actually given in November and December, and not all board members were there for that testimony, the board members who will be eligible to vote tonight are Mr. Cohen, Mr. Floyd, Mr. Schreiber, Mr. Davidge, Ms. Colson, and Ms. Lampros.
Okay, good. Anybody have any comments on the new proposal?
No, so we have to put in the stipulations, and we have to put in the stipulations in terms of the size, the building size, and the impervious coverage.
Yes.
And then do we put in something about the letter of agreement, the option?
I don't think we really have to speak to the,
Yeah, the reason, and I had discussed it with Mr. Dumont, I think the concern is that this is an agreement between the two parties, so that rather than having the zoning officer then need to determine have the terms of the option agreement been met or not, there's simply going to be the three conditions, which is, as you noted, the square footage of the house, total impervious coverage, and that it will be constructed in such a way that the headlights of vehicles will not shine on the home at 376 Ridgeview.
okay. Comments? Motion?
I move approval, subject to the conditions of Ms. Casey.
Second?
Okay. Questions? None? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Colson?
Yes.
Mr. Davidge?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Schreiber?
Yes.
Ms. Perron-Lambros?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to say to the owner, thank you very much. To the neighbors, thank you also. It's just good that this can be worked out to everybody's satisfaction. Thank you.
Took some time, but it worked.
But it was worth it, right? Good. Thank you. The town appreciates the effort. Okay, our next hearing carries the file number Z1818-672, 54 North Tulane Street, Block 2702, Lot 45, in the RB zone.
Mr. Bridger, we'll swear you in for the evening. Do you swear affirm your testimony this evening will be truthful?
Yes, I do.
And I'll also note that the noticing is in order and the board has jurisdiction to hear the case tonight.
Thank you. Good evening. The applicant and owner Thomas Border is requesting C1 and C2 variance relief to permit the conversion of the existing joint occupancy building to a two-family dwelling, an exception to the required minimum lot area, lot width, and lot depth. An application for C1 and, its subject's located in the RB zone in the former Princeton Borough. The required lot area for a single or two-family house is 6,600 square feet. The existing lot area is 4,611. The lot width requirement is 60. The existing is 50 feet. And the lot depth requirement is 100, and the existing is 92.28. The subject's non-complying with regard to the required 8-foot smaller side yard setback. The existing setback is 1 foot. It's also non-complying with regard to the combined 20-foot side yard setback. The existing is 8, and as well as the front yard setback. The requirement is 20, and the existing is 18.5. Some of you might be familiar with this property. They were granted a variance in 1998. It was a conditional use, standard use variance to permit the conversion of what at that time was a single-family house to a joint occupancy space containing a hairstyling salon and a two-bedroom apartment. In, I guess, 2014, the subject was granted, 2015, granted use variance and floor area variances to permit the use of the basement as an employee lounge and storage closets for hair salon use. The current project, the applicant is proposing to convert the existing salon on the first floor into a two-bedroom apartment. The existing apartment on the second and third floors will remain. No exterior changes to the structure are proposed. The required 3 parking spaces are located at the rear of the subject property. An existing parking layout that was created for the salon will be reconfigured. It will result in a reduction in impervious coverage of 471 square feet. So the recap of the variances required for this application are lot area, the requirement's 6,600 square feet, the existing is 4,611. Lot width, the requirement's 60 feet, the existing is 50 feet. And lot depth, the 100-foot requirement, the existing is 92.28. And there's also a parking setback requirement, which is basically in the common drive. The property, as you face the house to the left, also has a driveway, and it's all one big parking area, essentially. The required setback from a property line is 4 feet. In this case, the setback will be 1.8 feet. And I would just say that staff has no issues with the conversion of this joint occupancy building to a two-family dwelling. There are no external site issues, and the proposed use is considered to be a less intensive use than the current hair salon and apartment. They requested consideration under both the C1 and C2 criteria. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to address them. Thank you.
Please.
Good evening, Chairman Cohen, members of the board. First, let me ask, are you able to see anything on your screens? We have a one exhibit tonight, a PowerPoint presentation. Ah, there it is. At least it's for us, so whether you can see it or not is... I have paper copies if you can't.
We can see it on
Okay. Always have a minor heart attack when you tell them you're going to do PowerPoint and you don't see it, but here it is. Again, my name is Ryan Kennedy. I'm attorney at Stevens & Lee, here for the applicant tonight. To my left, your right, Thomas Borda is the property owner and applicant. Mr. Bridger's memo, I really think, captured the heart of this, especially his last statement about this being a less intense use for the site. The applicant is here to convert and essentially not change much of this existing building on North Tulane Street, with the exception of removing the sign that shows that it's partially a commercial business, a reconfiguration of the parking area in the back, and then to remove what had become about 500 square feet of gravel in the back to actually be green space for the use of the renters of the apartment. If we could have two things, Ms. Casey. One, we have a 7 numbered slide PowerPoint presentation like that to be entered as our one exhibit tonight. And second, if we could swear in Mr. Border.
Mr. Border, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm your testimony this evening will be truthful?
Yes, it will.
Thank you.
All right. Slide 2 of our presentation, Mr. Borda, if you could just generally, well, I don't think we need his testimony to orient ourselves to the site, but the blue dot is this site in comparison to the neighborhood. Moving in, we have a slide 3, a neighborhood view, and I'm going to ask the applicant to just very quickly talk about the other surrounding uses of his building down the street.
Right across the street, there's two property, one property with 2 buildings in one space. The one over to the right is another single family, and the one to that right is another single family. The one on the corner is some type of multi-unit apartment building or something like that. To the left would be rental units, and then on the corner would be it's a yoga studio now. And to the other corner would be the bicycle shop lot, and then another rental unit next to that. And my neighbor has a business and an apartment next to that. And then there's, next to me on the right-hand side would be, it used to be High Tops. Yes. High Tops or, yes.
And Mr. Borda, if behind the buildings, that's the Spring Street parking deck?
Yes, and the restaurant's trash station right in back of that fence.
And then kind of catty corner across the back on the other side of the access road to the parking deck, is that a
Pico.
PSE&G
Or Pico
substation?
or substation, yes.
So generally, there is a lot of residential use on that street?
Yes.
Okay. Now on slide 4, this is, I guess we'll call it a site plan, but just shows the orientation of the site, generally as it will be as a result of the application. Mr. Borda, the kind of top right, there's a big square that shows where impervious surface is going to be removed, and I think if you squint, you could see a little barbecue area noted there for the residents. What's there now, and what's going to be when you're finished?
There's going to be grass in that space right there. I had issues with the parking area in back of the library. They would push all their snow into my yard and killed all my arborvitaes and all my grass that I had there before. So I had to do something else. I had to put rock there because nothing else will grow, because every winter I wind up with the same situation. The snow in my yard from the snow plows and salt, which kills all bushes that you put there. And they knocked down my fence with the snow plows. I went through 3 fences at that property so far.
But there's a fence there now?
No, there's no fence at that part of the building, but to the middle of the building, there's a fence.
On the top left section, does that show where the parking will be reconfigured for the 3 residential
Yes,
spaces?
yes.
Down the left side, that's the shared kind of
Driveway.
common driveway with the neighbor?
Yes.
And then, other than the sign being removed in the front, are there any other external changes planned for the site?
No.
Are you going to make any changes to the lighting?
No, the lighting is great the way it is.
Any changes to where the trash is kept now?
No.
Okay. This next slide, sometimes people like to get a little bit into the weeds, but does this show the current floor plan and the plan for a two-bedroom apartment on the
Yes.
first floor? And just for the board's benefit, the second and third floor is currently a two-bedroom apartment itself?
Yes.
Okay. And that will be unchanged?
Right.
Mr. Bridger rattled through a series of variances that are required for this application, essentially all of which are a function of the existing site. Either were previously approved in one of the two, either 1998 or the 2015 applications that brought us here with the current commercial residential application, or just physical characteristics of the site. While we did apply for a C1 or C2, after thinking through this, it's more likely the flexible C2 is more appropriate. The purposes of zoning certainly are promoted by reducing the intensity of the use of the site for the benefit of the neighbors and traffic and the common driveway that is featured and shared with the neighboring use. The removal of the impervious surface to attempt to have some green space for the residents. And I initially thought it was a little silly, but, you know, as a barbecuer myself, they're attempting to, you know, there is open space for residential that's not really usable, and then there's stuff that people attempt to use, and they did make an effort on these plans, I noted, to set up as a barbecue area, so it does seem like that it's not open space just for show, that they actually intend to utilize it for a purpose. So that addition of green space, when you're balancing the positive and negative, certainly should help us get over the hump for the C2 variance. Additionally, the reduction of intensity, trips. Mr. Borda, I don't want to get too much into how active your business is now, but is it safe to say that there are a good number of customers coming in and out and parking during the day?
Not really. That's mainly for employees, the parking.
Sure, okay. Yes, I think the answer.
I'm telling the truth.
Yeah. But the customers then park on the street?
Yes.
Okay, so that use of the street parking would ultimately be removed.
Yes.
And the intensity and need for that would essentially be lessened. I think you described earlier the feel of the neighborhood while there are businesses there were certainly a good amount of residential compatible uses with your proposal. Subject to a summation, if there's any comments from the public, that's largely our presentation here tonight to try to keep this simple for you and keep things moving.
Okay, I just have one question. You obviously had, as you mentioned, a problem with the fence behind it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This has been
Big-
going on.
Big problem, right?
Yeah.
Are you going to do anything to separate the backyard, the green area of the backyard from the driveway back there?
What can I do, you know? I put a fence up, it gets knocked down. I went through 3 fences. Now, you know, how many fences you want me to go through?
Oh, no, it's fine. I understand. I mean, were the fences right on the property line?
They're where they should be. The fence
Where they
is
should be,
where
okay.
it should be. What happens when the snow gets back there, those guys just don't care about my fence. They just push it right into my yard. And I had 3 sets of arborvitaes up there, too. So, and that just keeps on getting wiped out. And, you know, it's very costly to keep on putting plants back there every year, and then the winter comes around.
I don't know.
And I'm losing them again. And I'm sure the borough don't want to help me with that.
Yeah.
So what's inspiring you to take away the gravel at this point? I'm just curious.
What's inspiring me to take away the gravel? They want grass, I want to put grass there. I don't know
But
how
is
long
it
that's
going
going
to,
to
it sounds
last.
like it's pretty vulnerable back there.
The grass? Yeah, it's vulnerable.
Okay.
If the plants are going, the grass is going to go
Right.
too, right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's from the soil.
Would sure the applicant be open to keeping the gravel. I'm going to attempt to try to
I don't know.
to go in the correct direction.
I don't think we're advocating keeping the gravel. I think the reason I made the comment is just, again, you have the driveway back there and the exit, the parking garage, the trash and everything else, and you have what appears to be going to be two very nice residential units there and a nice little green area in the back. And I was just wondering if you were going to make an attempt, and I understand you've made an attempt, to just create a little privacy back there.
Yeah, I could try to put some more plants back there again.
Yeah, no. It's truly, I would think at this point, it's your call. I mean, if you keep planting it and the people who are doing the plowing seem to just destroy it, you can only do that so many times.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay?
I have a question. Obviously, if you turn this into a residential unit, there are certain safety codes, fire codes that you have to meet on that. And I notice it's in the paperwork that you do that. Do you also have to change the fire safety on the second floor of the other apartment?
To the extent that it's necessary, we certainly will submit to that. Unfortunately, our architect had to be elsewhere this evening, and I'm sure she could answer that, but to the extent that something like that is necessary, absolutely, we would do that.
They're going to have to apply for building permits, and part of that review is fire separation, so they'll catch it there. Good question.
They'll be subject to inspection by the fire
Housing.
marshal and, yeah, okay.
Can I say something? When I did the commercial space, I have to have the fire rating ceilings in the building and the fire rating doors. So they're already in play there.
Yeah, you're not going to need the separation now that you had when you had commercial with residential above it. So you're, again, as Derek said, and you said, it's a less intensive use in all regards. Any other comments? Okay, let's just open it up to the public. Does anybody have any comments on this application? Hearing none, we'll close the public portion of the meeting. Do you have anything you'd like to close with?
Not really. I think staff did an excellent job of summarizing this. Ultimately, it's a less intense use, and a lot of effort was made through variances to allow the two uses as there is now, and ultimately is undoing some of that, essentially, in going this more as of, while variances are required, a two-family use is as of right in the zone versus the variances that were needed in the past. But ultimately, it's a less intense use. Hopefully, we can get a good amount of impervious surface removed and a net positive for the town.
All right, let's talk about this. Are there any comments? I just have one. With regard to the shared driveway, is there a formal easement agreement that you have with that? I mean, you would have had it before when you had the...
We never, the previous owner, we never had an agreement, well, we both repaved the driveway, the previous owner and myself. So, I think it has to be that way.
Okay, so there is no formal agreement, but this is the way it's existed for...
It's been that way, from
that way.
before that I took the property over.
Okay,
And
all right. Okay. Karen, does that present a problem that we don't have a formal agreement for the shared use of the driveway?
Well, I'll ask Mr. Bridger. I mean, at some point, I guess, if there's an issue between the owners, would that raise an issue for you then, or would you step in then and say, well, you're going to have to get it resolved in order to continue the use?
No, I would say it's a issue between the two property owners, and the application was approved twice before with the same situation. And I don't know what the prescriptive rights are of the use of each other's driveway are over 30 years. It would seem like that has a legal bearing too in some manner. I'm not a...
Fine, but if you don't see any need for any formal situation, then fine. Okay. Any comments? Any more comments? Well, I think I agree with both Mr. Bridger and the applicant that this is a less intense use. You know, it's only, I see this as only an improvement, and I'm in favor of it. Anybody like to make a motion?
I move approval of the change in use of the variances that are needed for it as a C2.
I would second that.
Second?
Mr.
Okay. All right. Claudia?
You done?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Coulson?
Yes.
Mr. Davich?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Ms. Pearl Ambrose?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. Our next case has the file number Z1818-629, 19 Linden Lane, Block 3303, Lot 6301 in the R4 zone.
Well, the noticing is in order, and the board has jurisdiction to hear the application tonight.
Good. Please.
Thank you. Nathan Thomas and Amanda Lynn are the owners of 19 Linden Lane. They are seeking C1 and C2 variance relief to permit the construction of a swimming pool in exception to setback and coverage requirements. Property is located in the R4 zone in the former Princeton Borough. The existing single-family use is permitted as of right. Subject property, the lot is complying, but the property itself is non-complying with regard to the required 8-foot side yard setback, smaller side yard. The existing is 5.1. It's non-complying with respect to the 3-to-1 height to setback, and non-complying with impervious coverage. The maximum amount is 36%, and the existing is 48%. It's an existing condition. And there's two accessory structures. A masonry shed, the setback should be 5 feet. The existing is plus or minus a foot. And then the setback for the garage at the rear of the lot, the required setback is 5, and the existing is 4.7 feet. 2004, a variance was granted to permit the construction of the almost 1,300 square foot detached garage in exception to coverage and setback requirements. The applicant is proposing to construct a 15 by 30 foot in-ground pool, and the pool is going to require the following variances. In the former Princeton Borough, a pool setback is 20 feet, and the existing setback is 8.5 feet. And also, there's an accessory structure coverage limit, which limits the amount of accessory structure coverage in any side or rear yard to a maximum of 20%, and this will violate the rear yard coverage requirement. The requirement is 20%, and the proposal is 31%. The applicant is proposing to remove an existing almost 477 square foot stone patio to offset the proposed 450 square foot in-ground pool. 2 rain gardens are proposed to address the stormwater management. And the amount of impervious coverage at the site will remain the same. They will submit a stormwater management plan, which will be reviewed by the land use engineer. And that's my memo. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them.
Please.
Hi. My name is Mark Thoman. I'm a landscape designer working with my clients at 19 Linden Lane. And we would like to enter this short PDF presentation that you see on your screens.
Can you lean in a little bit?
Sure. We'd like to enter the short PDF presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, hi. So we'll enter this presentation into, I think there's a kickback from that one too. Okay, we'll try
Mr.
that.
Thelman, question for you. Are you going to be offering testimony yourself? as the designer for your
Yes.
clients? All right, then we'll need to swear you in, and you said you are a landscape design professional. Are you licensed in the state of New Jersey?
No, landscape designer.
Okay.
Yes.
And if you'd raise your right hand?
Sure.
Do you swear affirm any testimony you give this evening will be truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as Mr. Bridger noted, we are looking for the C1 and C2 variants. The property at 19 Linden Lane in the R4 zoning. This is the current survey, and we looked at several options to install the in-ground pool. The main reason that we're looking for the variance is the location on the left side where the pool is centered in the yard, which would conform to the required setback variances. There is a stand of mature trees in that area, and we don't want to cut down the trees. We'd like to keep the trees and maintain the integrity and aesthetics and biodiversity on the property. So the area to the right, which is proposed on the 8.5 feet from the fence line, that is an area that there are no trees currently, and it wouldn't affect any of the trees. We looked at, this is that existing tree canopy, and we looked also, the notices that went out to the neighbors, and interestingly, we took measurements to see how far each of the, actual outdoor patio spaces were from each one of the neighbors, and even the neighbor at that 57.4, and we know we can't submit letters, but they were very supportive and, had no issues with this proposal. We'll also be looking along that edge to create additional hedging and buffer for further visual and acoustic purposes. This is also in your packets, but this is looking at further drawings, which is a combination of the proposed pool from a landscape design perspective and the pool engineering. And in that area, to avoid, first the tree removal, we also are looking to enhance and create additional rain gardens, both for aesthetic purposes in the yard, but also to mitigate any further any stormwater. Additionally, we've looked, as we've understood and run the calculations on the coverage. The clients decided that we can remove the existing flagstone patio, which is under an existing pergola next to the accessory shed structure, and turn that into pervious lawn surface to further offset that area. I'm looking at the pool drawings. And then finally, there was no issues from the historic preservation department on the aesthetics and use of this land for pool. Thank you.
Can you just describe the planting buffer? Is that going to be the height of that? What you're planning on putting in there?
Sure. We'd be looking a mix of shrubs and trees at that 6 to 10 foot level of a current, what a fence line would be now.
Okay. Thank you.
You just said something about looking at changing the accessory structure coverage. Would that make a difference in what we see here in the proposal, or is that already?
That's in the proposal, removing the patio and turning that to pervious cover, yes. Impervious cover, sorry.
Yes. With the swimming pool, will there be some type of machinery? I know you have a tool shed, but
Pool equipment?
equipment, I know you have that. Something came out last month on a different application. regarding, you know,
Well, the pump and the filter, that whole,
Sure. The pump and the filter will be located adjacent to the existing shed, and it will meet the required offset of, what was it, 3 feet? Yes.
okay. Thank you.
Any other comments? Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think the clients are very keen to. They purchased the house in Princeton because of the nature and the aesthetic characteristic of and they intend to maintain that.
Yeah, I know this, I know the house, and I've spent a lot of time in the house. It was a good friend of mine, and it was really, the house is beautiful, and the yard itself is incredible, actually. Yeah, it's a very nice property. Okay, anyone else? Anybody in the public like to make a comment on this application? Okay, we don't hear anybody. You done?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's go into executive session.
the concept of accessory structure coverage is new to me, and I'm trying to sort of understand that in relation to impervious surface coverage.
Good question. So before consolidation, there was no impervious coverage in the borough. There was no FAR. There was just building coverage. So everything was covered by building coverage. That has been replaced now since we have impervious coverage and we have a stormwater management ordinance, but they still left in the coverage for accessory structures. And I think the intent of it was to limit the amount of structures that could be put up against side and rear yards, you know, I guess in light of the possible negative effect that could have. So that's the intent of it, I think. So that's why it is. But there is no more building coverage per se, but they kept that like the rear lot coverage would be that setback of the rear lot, which is 35 feet times the width of that lot, which is 139.49 feet. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
I'm persuaded that this is good here because you hope to preserve the trees and that you reduce the impervious coverage, but then I see this and I'm not sure how to reckon with that. That sort of hit me as a new negative, actually.
so the way the current stormwater management ordinance is,
You know, going from 20 to, required to 20 to proposed 31%.
yeah, actually should have actually put the what the existing was, because most of it is that garage. The way they've situated the pool, not the whole pool gets counted in that rear yard setback. So I don't think it's that high. I don't know if you have we could do the math. I mean, the frame garage is like 1,400 square feet, and the pool, I'm thinking, is about 15 times 225 square feet. That's the addition. But at the same time, they're taking away impervious coverage, which complies with the ordinance now. Even though they're over that, they are staying at the current level, which is 48%, and they're also putting in stormwater management techniques, which will also help the impervious or the permeable surface there.
Anyone else?
Well, also, the keeping of the trees will also absorbs more stormwater than just lawn if they're to take the trees down. So the trees actually are helpful to be maintained, not only for beauty, but also they'll help with the stormwater anyways.
Okay. All right. So let's go into executive session. Any further comments? Motion? Well, we approved the garage a number of years ago. This
The lot was shaped like
The lot was shaped like that for a long time, yeah. Because I think we had questioned the applicant, I think we talked about that, looking at the house next door, and that's just the way this has been, right? Yeah, I think this lot's been like this for a long time. The house was originally for sale for quite a while, before it was redone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll second.
Comments?
Are we moving it as a C1 or a C2?
Well, if it's a C1, then I guess somebody better explain what you perceive as the hardship.
Right, so is this a motion for a C2 then?
C2, probably.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Coulson?
Yes.
Mr. Davich?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver? Mr. Valvanis?
Yes.
Ms. Perrin-Ambrose?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
By the pool party. It was a very nice property.
Yeah, that's
I went there today, yeah.
Yeah, the house is
beautiful.
really nice.
The house is really nice from the outside, but the backyard's lovely. That stone building is spectacular.
I want to make
Yeah.
And the garage, well,
The garage is nice too,
yeah, I
yeah.
collect cars, so. I
Oh,
like
do you?
the garage,
Okay.
right. And, yeah, so.
Are you mad?
They did a very nice job. The house, the interior of the house is really.
Before did they renovate it or was it renovated?
No,
before
it
the project?
was renovated by the last time.
Oh, okay, was it a friend of yours or something? or-
Yeah. Did a very, very nice job.
Yeah, there was some nice trees, those trees are beautiful back there.
But the backyard itself is lovely, yeah. Okay. That's it here. All right. Our next case is 293 Hamilton Avenue, file number Z1919-706. It's block 3211, lot 22 in the R2 zone. Mr.
The
Bridger?
noticing is in order, and the board has jurisdiction to hear the application.
Hanging.
Karen, I do promise to tell the truth tonight, so.
Well, I was going to swear you in, Kevin, when Derek was done, but that's fine, Mr. Wilkes. And you're
Oh,
also...
I see, I upstaged Derek, I'm sorry.
Correct.
Forgive
But
me.
that's all right. Mr. Wilkes, you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey,
Yes, I am.
and you're representing the applicants tonight.
Yes, I am.
And do you swear affirm your testimony this evening will be truthful?
I do indeed.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Derek.
No worries. Benny Sofer and Janet Chen are the owner of 293 Hamilton Avenue, and they are seeking C1 and C2 variants to permit the reconstruction of a roof in exception to the height to setback requirement. Subject property is located in the R2 zone in the former Princeton Borough. The subject lot and property are complying with respect to the applicable bulk regulations. Applicant is adding a second floor to the existing one-story ranch, and is also constructing an in-ground pool with a stone patio deck surrounding it. These improvements are permitted as of right. The proposed hip gable roof will encroach into the required height to setback. The following variance is required. The height to setback requirement is 2, and the proposed height to setback is 2.125 to 1. And they requested C1 and C2. It's a minor infraction into the height to setback plane. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to address those.
Okay. Kevin?
Good evening, members of the board. 293 Hamilton Avenue, a brick house between Harriet Drive and Harrison Street. We are adding...
Derek, can you give him the microphone, please?
What's that?
The microphone, so we...
No, lean in a little better. How about that?
No, before we
Good evening. Good evening. That's about right. Okay. We're adding a floor onto 293 Hamilton Avenue, keeping the footprint of the existing building, rebuilding the house. And in the course of doing that, keeping the roof profile that existed on the previous house, and we're rebuilding the roof, obviously. It's not the same roof, but it has the same hip and ridge gable configuration. And through the course of raising up this roof and adding a floor above the floor that existed on the southeast corner of the house, or the rear left corner, as you look at it from Hamilton Avenue, we have an encroachment into the height to setback ratio calculation for the soffit. I believe about 12 feet of the soffit. You can see this on sheet V200 of the drawing set that we submitted. The reason for the encroachment is the slope of the land drops away towards Harrisbrook along the side yard of the house. So the front of the house is not in any violation because that grade is at the grade of Hamilton Avenue. The right side of the house, the west side, is not in violation because that driveway and garage are at the same elevation as Hamilton Avenue. The left or east side of the house, the property slopes down between the two homes on the side yard. And halfway or two-thirds of the way through that slope, the plane of the height to setback ratio starts to slice through. Basically, that plane is lowering as the grade is lowering. So whereas the front part of the soffit is in compliance, as the grade lowers, almost like an axe, it slices through the corner of the roof that we propose. So what we're asking for is relief. We really can't build up the grade to cure that violation because it would put the neighbor's property in some drainage peril that doesn't really exist today. Everything flows back to Harrisbrook on these properties along Hamilton. If I tried to game this a little bit and build it up, it would only be a few feet, but it would be rude to my neighbor, to my client's neighbor, because it would sheet water off to their property. So instead, we want to come and ask for relief to obviously leave the grade in place as it exists and have this small encroachment into the height to setback ratio. It's just really the soffit that projects off the roof. I had discussions with Derek. We actually submitted a flat roof plan, which was in conformance, and Derek approved it. And I looked at it for a month and I said, this is just ugly. And so I said to my client, this is going to add a little time, a little difficulty, but I think for this small relief, it's worth asking for a variance. And Janet and Benny said, okay. And the roof, I believe, will look more contextual with the neighborhood, having a roof that's largely identical in shape to what was there before instead of a flat roof. Yes, sir. I didn't. Derek did. Derek's sharp. I missed it on the submission. I kind of thought I was as of right. And Derek said, can you make a drawing for me and show me this back corner? And I said, okay. And then I drew it and I'm like, oops. So clearly he's more experienced than I am. He can probably sniff these things out.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yes, George.
Pardon me. As a development option, of course, you could have torn this down and built a completely new house. Is that correct?
Well, we could have, but that's, you're theoretically, but it's a great little house. It's a tiny little house. It was clearly built by a mason because the masonry component of this house is stunningly overbuilt. And, you know, as an architect, it's made no sense to throw the value of that piece of structure away. I have gutted the inside. The carpentry person on the job wasn't as good as the mason person on the job. So we're rebuilding the interiors, but we're keeping that shell, and it was so strong I can build right on top of it. And, you know, all of us collectively believe that neighborhood context is a reasonable issue, and this was not a house that deserved to be torn down. There are houses that deserve to be torn down, and this was not one of them. Even though it was a modest house, we're keeping the footprint, and the space that my clients need will be gained by adding the floor above.
I guess the point is, if you could eliminate all variances with the new house.
I'm sorry, I
You
think...
could eliminate any need for a variance with the new house.
Well, I could, yes, sir. That would be a costly solution.
Any other comments? Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Any other comments you'd like to make?
I don't want to keep going on and on. And I think it's fairly straightforward if I need to explain any more, but
Okay.
I've said what I think is germane.
Thanks. Okay. Is there
You've got
anybody
three
in the
people
audience?
behind me, so...
Oops. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
You have 3 more cases, I believe, behind me, so I
Yeah.
don't want to waste your time.
Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to make a comment on this? Please come forward.
Good evening. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. My name is Paul Shore, and my wife and I own the adjacent property at 299 Hamilton Avenue.
Mr. Shore, before I don't want to interrupt you, do you swear or affirm any testimony you give this evening will be truthful?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
We are here to bring to your attention the adverse impact of the project, specifically the house, the pool, and the regrading of lot, which we knew of, lot 77 and lot 169, which are now apparently called lot 22. The impact is on our adjacent lot, 299 Hamilton Avenue. The following documents are presented in support of our adverse impact presentation. So I'm going to submit this to you. There are, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What are they, Mr.
There are health department reports and engineering plans that were prepared by the applicant.
All right, so your testimony is these are documents that are already in the town's files?
The health department, yes.
Okay.
100%, right.
Okay. All right, well then we'll label these. What's the first one? What's the first document?
The first document has 11 pages, and it concludes the health department reports on mosquito complaints, and attached to that are also 2 pamphlets, one by the State Department of Health, both obtained from the Princeton Department of Health, on Zika virus.
Is there a date on that document?
Yeah, they're all dated from from April 2017 until November 2018. And they're labeled 1 through 11.
All right, so we'll call that 01
Okay.
for Objector 1.
Thank you very much. In addition to those documents, I'm going to submit the plan prepared on behalf of the applicant, which includes an engineering plan for a bridge and the pool and the house, for wetlands permits and flood hazard permits.
Is there a date on that, Mr. Shore?
Sure. July 6th, 2018. It was received by the Princeton Planning Board on July 16th, 2018. That's the flood hazard area plan.
It was just brought to my attention that this is a C-click fix with the town's system of calling in complaints, and it has, the property address is 72 Harriet Drive.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I will explain that in my testimony.
Okay.
The wetlands permit is dated July 6th, 2018. I'm sorry, the wetlands map.
All right,
is there.
so that's objector 2.
It may take a moment to look at least 1 or 2 pages, as the zoning officer indicated, and I certainly want to provide that moment to both Mr. Wilkes, I believe, as well as the zoning officer, and obviously the chair of the zoning board. The applicant, Mr. Benny Soffer, has met with us last week at the rear of our property, and at that time agreed, I can't speak for him, but I think we reached an agreement that regrading of the property could be done now as the property is being constructed and the pool is being built and regraded around it. And he agreed that at this point in time, that would be the proper thing to do, respecting the drainage issues that we and our neighbors face. So that's an important point, but when I reviewed this further today, along with having had meetings with the Princeton Sewer Operating Committee, Tom Hughes, as well as the engineer Donald Mayer Brown from the department in Princeton, they recognize that any drainage from our properties, not just our property at 293 Hamilton, but also 299 Hamilton, but also 293 Hamilton and 72 Harriet, which is in part answer to your question, sir, about the need to present information on 72 Harriet. We're all a part and dependent upon regrading of the Princeton Sewer Operating Committee easement, which is along the back and adjacent to Harry's Brook. So the back of all of our properties is elevated to, in a way, prevent drainage from our properties from entering Harry's Brook. So any change in grade would not be possible until that grade is also changed. I'll stop a moment if there's a question. And that can be shown on the topo that I've submitted in terms of the engineering plans. The contour lines on that plan indicate the slope of the land slowly towards, slowly I say because it's a very slight slope, going towards both our property and Harry's Brook. So it's not all towards the rear of 293. It's both our property and Harry's Brook. And the PSOC, yes?
No, I was going to ask our attorney how this, when you know, or if you know now, how this issue affects our decision. I'm not sure at this point.
Well, I guess perhaps the question would be, would these considerations be taken into account by the engineering department or PSOC? Would they need to do that in connection with issuing a permit for the project?
I can't speak for the SOC, but I do recall the pool was applied for. As of right, it didn't require any variances, and there was a stormwater management plan submitted at that time, which was reviewed by the land use engineer. The house itself, by adding a second floor, wouldn't generate any additional impervious, and technically you wouldn't need a stormwater management plan to raise the roof on the house. But obviously all the impervious associated with the pool and the patio and the surrounding improvements would require a stormwater management plan, which was applied for. And I believe it's been approved by the engineer. So I would suggest that you separate the two issues of the setback of the soffit, which really doesn't have any stormwater issues, and then this would be an issue that the land use engineer could look into. And they've already talked to Don, but I would be happy to run it by Jack West, who's the land use engineer. And I don't know if Kevin has anything to offer.
I can confirm what Derek says, that we have a significant stormwater collection system placed to the south of the swimming pool underground, and all of our leaders and downspouts and drains around the pool coping, all of that will be drained into an underground dry well type stormwater management system. Yes, we're going to tie actually everything into it.
And you're saying that?
The house, yeah, the leaders from the roof gutters of the house will also be connected into that system. So we're actually going to be improving the existing conditions, because right now the leaders just discharge at the base of each downspout onto a splash block on the two sides of the house and one on the rear. So we are going to tie all that together. But you're right, it was the pool terrace that generated the additional coverage that required the stormwater management.
So do we have evidence that our engineering department has reviewed and approved this?
Well, I didn't bring any evidence because that really wasn't the issue at hand tonight, but
No, I understand.
have a
I'm
permit.
just wondering what we have to...
I mean, I don't have anything here. I remember the pool coming in, and it was reviewed by engineering prior to
And so the
coming to
pool,
zoning.
pool, from an engineering standpoint, was approved?
Was approved.
And the related work for drainage relative to the pool was approved?
Yes.
Prior to this application? Okay. All right. Thank you.
That raises a serious question about transparency and notice, because I did not find any stormwater management plan. I wouldn't be here before you if I had found a stormwater management plan. But as I have not had an opportunity to review that, I have to go by what I just heard, and that's inadequate. And I'll tell you why it's inadequate. We are sitting on top of a clay lens, which is about 2 feet. So all surface drainage cannot percolate easily into the ground. Secondly, underneath that clay lens is a groundwater table. So a dry well is not dry, it's wet. Everything that we have in that area in our backyard is wet. We're sitting on top of both clay, and beneath that clay is a water table which drains. That's why it's a swamp. There was a swamp back there, and that's why it had to be filled which is what was alluded to earlier about how the house and the garage are at the same elevation of Hamilton Avenue. And there is a severe slope at that point between our house, which actually serves as a low point for the adjoining houses. So there is a water table issue, and there is a clay lens, and the construction of a dry well would not really function terribly well. It wouldn't be dry.
The issue before us, basically, we're basically, that's a previous approval, not the basis of this application.
I submit that any leaders and change in the roof, because they're connected to the downspouts, which then go into a dry well, are related.
But the addition of the second floor to the existing dwelling doesn't create any more roof drainage. I mean, it's the same drainage, it's just up 9 feet higher. And so it really doesn't affect the overall drainage of the property.
Which was a problem.
Mr. Bridger, where could the stormwater management materials be had in the municipal records?
They were in the engineering department. I think if, and I didn't know you spoke to Don Mayor Brown, but he would have access to those. Did you look at the plans when you went to the site and he toured it with you?
We had a meeting with Don Mayor Brown and Tom Hughes at the site, and they all concurred with the kind of approach that I'm proposing here, which is that regrading of the PSOC has to be a part of any regrading plan. And I don't know if that was, Mr. Wills could present that information.
Do you want to say something, Kevin?
Well, I just want to say with all due respect to Mr. Shore, he's mixing two issues here together. The regrading of the SOC easement and the stormwater management strategy that we have on our parcel, completely unrelated issues. This easement from SOC runs from Harriet Drive, roughly parallel to Harrisbrook, and the roadbed of the easement allows the sewer operating committee access to manhole covers on the sewer line is indeed higher than the adjacent property on Harriet Drive, and Mr. Shore has created a drainage ditch from the back of his house down towards Harrisbrook, and it runs into this raised roadbed, and it actually doesn't drain at all. It's ineffective. But that's not the issue. That's a different issue than what he's bringing up on our stormwater management plan. Even if I collected every ounce of water that ever fell on this property and socked it away, that has nothing to do with the fact that SOC's easement at the south end of the property has some elevation issues.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I'll go back to your earlier statement where you indicated that, and this is why I said we met with Mr. Soffer, and we agreed that there was a grading opportunity, but it's going to require, upon more reflection, the assistance, the further assistance, because everyone has been very helpful thus far, the engineering department and PSOC, in addressing this problem. And I would like to point out why I attached the Princeton Health Department complaints regarding mosquitoes at 72 Harriet was because that mosquito problem is a reflection not just at 72 Harriet, but at the rear of all the properties, especially 293, the one where a proposed pool is, and that also 299, which is also a low spot in a floodplain area that has many mosquito breeding issues.
Okay, but the work related to the pool installation, the drainage system proposed was reviewed by the engineer, by the town engineer, and approved, and it's not related to this application tonight.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with that, because if in fact the drawings that were submitted to the engineering department did not clearly indicate the PSOC easement and its elevation, and they're not shown clearly on that drawing, then I would submit that the application was not complete. And I don't know, I haven't seen it.
It's not, again, that's not before us this evening. What's before us this evening is the height to setback on an overhang on the side of a raised roof.
Well, your application is for a hardship, a C1 and a C2. I'm not sure exactly what hardship you're addressing, but the adverse impacts on the neighborhood are the project, which includes this particular variance request.
I'm not so sure they include the specific variance requests.
The variance
Your
request
issue-
would
your
not have
issue-
been made without the project being submitted.
The subject to this application is just the overhang. It's not any of the drainage issues.
It's the application for the project.
It's the application.
Oh, you don't think so?
It's the application for the, essentially raising a roof, creating a two-story home where a one-story home exists, and a variance to allow for a slight encroachment on the overhang.
Well, once again, I'm going to go back to the earlier statement by Mr. Wilks that if in fact the gutters were not collected and put into a quote dry well, this would have an adverse impact, a continuing and perhaps greater impact on our property.
When the engineering work relative to the pool drainage, the regrading was submitted and reviewed, did it take into consideration the roof drainage from the house?
Well, technically speaking, I did not prepare those drawings. They were prepared by engineering and land planning, but I believe they were taken into account, and that's why we're tying in the leaders to this system. So
You are tying in the drainage into this new system?
Correct, yes, sir.
Okay.
So I believe we'll be improving the present situation where they presently discharge close to Mr. Shore's property, and they'll be diverted back to a storage system, which, you know, I can't really debate with him where the water table is because I don't know that for a fact.
Okay, but and we don't have anything on the prior drainage approval.
Engineering, land planning.
I mean, not
prepared
at this hearing. It's been approved.
It's just, we know it's been approved.
The design and calculations were submitted to the engineering department, Princeton, and it was approved.
So if and I recognize your concern, I mean, I'm not trying to ignore it. Can we make a part of the record the testimony of Mr. Wilks relative to the incorporation of the roof drainage into the overall drainage system of the property?
I mean, that's what he's testifying to. I don't see why it is part of the record.
Okay, so I mean, I just want to go on record then as saying that this issue that you're bringing up is in fact being addressed in this application.
I appreciate your attempting to move forward on the application. It makes sense to me. But at the same time, we as a neighborhood, and another neighbor is here, have a serious concern with drainage, whether it's from this roof, on that property, or increased impervious cover because of the pool. All of those things could lead to the same exact problem that existed at 72 Harriet, where we had numerous mosquito complaints over a period of years. And I've documented that.
I believe, at least based on the testimony, the applicant in his prior submittals has addressed the issues related to drainage on this specific property relative to the pool and now the house.
I think he qualified that. He said he could not testify as to the groundwater level. He could not testify as to the groundwater elevations. He testified to that just a few minutes ago.
Okay, but the issue is the issue is the roof right now. But the fact that the applicant has testified to the fact that his stormwater management plan for this property has been reviewed and approved by our engineer should really give you a degree of comfort that at least relative to what they're doing here should not impact the overall situation in the neighborhood.
If they were here and I had seen the stormwater management plan, I'd be better prepared to make the comments tonight. I had no knowledge of that prior submittal. However, I can only defer to the board and hope that you would recognize by perhaps bifurcating these issues so that we can both move forward. And you can read into the record not just Mr. Wilkes' testimony, but consider the testimony that I'm presenting through these same documents that he and the health department have issued to us.
Please.
I understand his concerns are valid. What I would suggest is the pool's as of right, so it's very difficult to say you can't look. You have to separate the variance from the pool. The pool's as of right. There was an engineering plan done, and before the property's issued a CO, there's an engineering inspection. So I would suggest maybe we set a meeting up tomorrow with Jack West, the land use engineer. We can meet on site. We could look at what your issues are. If there's ways that we can work it out with the applicant, let's do that. And,
Thank you.
And try to, address your concerns, which are valid. And I think, that's maybe a way we can
Thank you very much.
turn it around. But
I'm all for that.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else here who'd like to speak to this application? Okay. We'll close the public portion. Do you have anything you'd want to say before we go into executive session? Okay. Members of the board, please.
Yeah, I wonder if we have any clarity from Mr. Wilkes and Mr. Bridger. I'm sorry, is this okay?
Speak into the microphone.
I'm trying to speak into the mic. Is this acceptable? No? Is there any clarity on the issue that was raised about the geology, the clay lens, and the level of groundwater, and the efficacy of that dry well? Or is it essentially there's no solution to that?
Well, I'm sure there's clarity, but as a registered architect, that's not my area of expertise. I will point out that the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection reviewed and approved this plan.
That's, in a sense, that's a separate application from what we're talking about now.
Understood.
Okay.
I would move to approve the application as a C2 variance.
Okay. You were making a motion?
Unless there's further discussion, but I think the impact of what's being suggested here is de minimis. It doesn't, in and of itself, have any, this particular aspect of the overall development doesn't have any impact on the issues raised by the objector, and there are discussions that will occur to hopefully assuage some of those concerns and deal with that. But I don't think that on the narrow issue that's before the board, which is the zoning issue, if they put a flat roof on, they wouldn't even need to be here. So the fact that they're putting on a roof that has hips, essentially, and is over by a little bit, that's the only reason why, and the narrow issue that we're here to consider. So on that basis, I don't think that this merits any further discussion.
Okay. Just one moment. Does anybody on this end have anything to say? Okay. All right, so are you making a motion now?
I am indeed making a motion to approve the application as a C2 variance.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay. Claudia? Oh, Claudia. We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Coulson?
Yes.
Mr. Davidge?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Valanis?
Yes.
Ms. Pearl Ambrose?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we take 5 minutes, Steve?
Fine. 5 minutes.
Our thing is.
Good try.
My garage is big. Oh, yeah. 10. Much to my wife's chagrin. Although one of them is her car, that's a violation. I can't get around. My wife tells people with marriage you're entitled to one enclosed parking space. That's it. So she either gets one or she gets them all.
Good for her.
Let's try to get started again.
What? Do it again.
All right, let's go back on the record here and start again. Our next application is file number Z1919-712, excuse me, 299 Walnut Lane, Block 7206, Lot 3 in the R6 zone. Mr. Bertram? Oh, wait, Karen, is everything in order?
It is. Noticing is in order. The board has jurisdiction to hear the application.
Okay. Derek, please.
J. Roger Woolston's the owner of 299 Walnut Lane. He's seeking a floor area variance pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-74 and C1 and C2 variances to permit the development of a second floor addition in exception to the required setbacks. Property is located in the R6 zone in the former Princeton Township. The subject lot is non-complying with respect to the required 10,890 square foot lot area. The existing lot area is 10,500. It's also non-compliant with lot width. The required is 85 feet. The existing is 70. It's also non-complying, the subject property, with regard to the side yard setback. The requirement's 15. The existing is 5.2. And it's non-compliant with the required 30-foot combined side yard setback. The existing is 17.95. The history on this property, it was granted a variance March 30th, 1964 to construct an addition on the north side of the house to permit a 4-foot 9-inch setback where the requirement was 15. Variance relief was also granted to permit an addition on the southern elevation to permit a 12-foot 6-inch setback in exception to the required 15-foot setback. This board heard a case recently in 2016 and approved an application to allow a right side yard addition setback of 12.9 feet to permit a 150 square foot second floor addition. This project, the applicant is proposing to construct a second floor addition on the opposite side of the house. And it would also go back in the rear and be situated over the garage and an existing enclosed back porch. This will allow for the remodeling of an existing bedroom that has a sloped ceiling, limiting its usefulness, as well as the addition of another bedroom. The proposed dwelling will contain 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths, and the 283 square foot addition will be constructed on top of the first floor and will follow the existing 5-foot 2-inch setback. This is considered an increase in the existing degree of noncompliance. The proposed setback is 5'2", whereas the required setback is 15 feet. Variance relief is required. In terms of the D variance, it's a floor area variance. The maximum proportional FAR is 25.9%. The existing floor area ratio is 24.9, and the proposed FAR is 28.5. This is a D variance, and it requires an affirmative vote by 5 members. If you have any questions, I would be glad to address them. Thank you.
No?
Mr. Woolston will swear you in. If you would raise your right hand, you swear affirm your testimony this evening will be truthful. Thank you.
Now I think we're online. Very good. Good evening. This
think
is
you-
my third appearance.
I
to
think
the-
you need the mic or something. We can't hear you.
This is, okay, I'll speak as close as I can.
Yeah.
This is my third appearance in front of the zoning board, the first being 1964, and again in 72, and then again 3 years ago. So this is really my fourth appearance in front of the zoning board. I've lived at 299 Walnut Lane since 1960. Moved here to Princeton 5 years after I graduated from Princeton, and I have lived in this home now for 59 years, and I would like to continue living in here. I hope to age in place in this house. To make that possible, my older daughter has suggested and has offered to come and live with me to help support me. I don't need much support at the moment, but I suppose the time will come when I will. To make it possible for her to join me, I have designed an addition to the house and a reconstruction of one room, as Mr. Bridger indicated, and this will give her some space to live and, as she says, not infringe on my space. So by doing this, I expect to continue living in this house for the foreseeable future. Therefore, it will not become a candidate for another tear down and rebuild. I see too many of them going on in Princeton. I've done the design work myself for all of these additions in the past. I'm not formally an architect, but sort of an amateur architect. But I've enjoyed what I have designed, and I think what I have presented here for this will present an improvement to the appearance of the house. Some of the pages in the back of the application show what it will look like, you know, the before and after views from each perspective. And so that's why I'm here. There will be no increase in the footprint. There's no increase in the impervious coverage. It is basically the floor area ratio increase of about 283 feet that is required, as well as the technical C2 variance because of the side yard setback. Not changing that, but I'm adding another room at the same setback, and technically that requires a C2. So that's what I'm here about. I have contracted with Matt Bonacci of Black Bear Builders to do the contracting if the variance is approved. And I might mention that all previous modifications to my house have been done by Williams Builder, Harry Williams, who many of you may remember. Of course, Harry passed away 2 years ago. But Matt Bonacci is an alumnus of Harry Williams, so there's a kind of continuity in the builder. So I'm very pleased with that. So I'd be pleased to answer any questions any of you may have about the design and my intentions.
Do you use the garage for the car?
I would if my Suburban would fit in the garage, but that garage was built in 1948 when vehicles were a little smaller, so I cannot fit my Suburban in the garage. But I'm keeping the garage as a garage, yes.
Comments from anybody else?
I might mention that I've spoken to my neighbors, the ones on the north, Ted and Christine Tomasi. They moved in next door to me in 1962, so they've been there as my neighbors for all that many years, some 57. Their kids grew up coincident with my kids, and when I mentioned to them that my daughter Cynthia would be coming to live with me, they said, "Oh, that's great. She'll take care of you." So we have a very good, friendly relationship with the neighbors.
So I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So I understand. The current layout, you have 3 bedrooms and they're all upstairs, and the new layout is really adding a 4th bedroom? Or are some of the rooms not really used as bedrooms?
I'm not sure I quite understood your question.
How many bedrooms do you have on the 2nd floor now?
At the moment, there are 3, and this will be adding a 4th bedroom on the 2nd floor, yeah. And there are 2 bathrooms on the 2nd floor.
But it's also true that the 3rd bedroom on the 2nd floor is slightly unusable because of the slope of the roof.
It is, yeah. It was common to build rooms like that back in the 40s, and one constantly bangs one's head into the ceiling. And so this, by reconstructing that room and having full height ceiling, front to back, that room becomes much more usable.
Any other comments? If I don't have any, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anybody here that would like to speak to this application? Guess not. Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Want to say anything else?
I say again,
Do you want to say anything else?
I think I've said it all, but I'll be glad to answer any questions or add anything else. I know time's getting short. I don't want to take up too much space here.
Comments? Ready to discuss this? You are increasing the degree of noncompliance, obviously, by adding a 2nd floor in violation of the setback, although the setback that currently exists is being maintained.
Yes, it is.
Just adding to the bulk of the house.
Chairman, I just
Yes.
want to point out a minor inconsistency. The survey references the setback on this side of the house as 5.1 inches, but my memo in your application referenced 5.2. I think the intent is to go atop the existing floor and not to increase that setback, so I just want to bring that to the board's attention.
Right.
Yeah, it is noted on the application as 5.2. It's actually 5.1.
I move that we accept this application.
Question for board members. The previous approval, which was issued in 2016, approved that project at the time based on C1 hardship due to the shape of the property, the narrowness. Is that the same basis that the board would want to approve this, or as a C2?
I would think,
The prior
I'm
resolution.
open to my colleagues' opinion.
excuse me?
What do you think?
I would think a C2 would probably be more appropriate, wouldn't it?
Well, the prior resolution, and I'm reading them, it found the variance for the proposed second floor addition is a direct result of the narrowness and shape of the lot, and that proposed addition would comply, this is on the other side, with the existing side yard setback of 12.9 feet. So in this case, I don't know if you would still find that, given this addition, is that being affected by the lot, or is this simply more an issue of the design of the current house, and that it's not a matter of hardship now, it's simply C2?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I would think so.
Yes.
Anybody
C2.
disagree?
I move that we approve a C2.
Do we have a second?
I would second that.
Oh, we did? Okay.
I would like to, yeah.
Is there any discussion?
There's the FAR too.
No, we also need to.
The FAR is what, 2.9% increase, which is, I think, minimal. I like the idea, obviously, that it gives you the ability to stay in the house, which is nice.
Does that have to be part of the motion?
Yes.
The FAR has to be part of the motion, yeah. So I think we should recognize that the FAR is increasing to 28.5%, and, over the current 25.9. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
I second it, yeah.
Claudia?
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Coulson?
Yes.
Mr. Davich?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mrs. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Valvani?
Yes.
Ms. Peron-Lambrose?
Yes.
Thank you. It's approved.
Thank you. In closing, I'd just like to thank all of you on the board for your service. I know it's, a chore to do this and listen to all this. I served in Beaver Cove, Maine for 16 years in a similar capacity, so I know what you have to do, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Our last application of the evening is file number Z1919-715, 249 Riverside, Block 8804, Lot 20 in the R5 zone. Karen, is everything in order?
Noticing is in order, the board has jurisdiction.
Derek?
The applicants, Justinian and Daniela Rosca, are the owners of 249 Riverside. They are seeking C1 and C2 variance relief to permit an addition to an existing single-family dwelling, in exception to the garage placement requirements. Subject properties in the R5 zone in the former Princeton Township subject lot and property are complying with the applicable bulk regulations. The applicant is proposing to construct a ground level 1,100, almost 1,200 square foot addition to the existing one-story single-family home. The addition will be built over a full basement and will contain a master bedroom and an expanded kitchen living room area. The existing garage is currently recessed 4 feet from the front facade of the house. The new garage will project 13 feet from the nearest front facade. The municipality enacted at the end of 2008, a set of new ordinances known as the Neighborhood Character Ordinance. In Section 10B 255.2 D1A of this ordinance regulates the locations of garages and requires that the setback for a garage be 16 feet from the nearest section of the front facade of the house. The applicants are redoing the house, and the garage will actually project 13 feet from the nearest front facade of the house. A variance is required, and they've requested both the C1 and the C2. If you have any questions, try to address them. Thanks.
Good evening. I'm Chris Tarr, the attorney for the Roscoes who are here with me. And better? Thank you. I'd like for them both to be sworn in now, if we may.
Absolutely. If you would both raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm your testimony this evening will be truthful?
Yes.
Yes?
We've got a slide presentation. You see the first slide up on the screen. If we could mark the whole set as A1, and we'll be sure to give Claudia a set as we finish up. We flipped a coin, and Mrs. Roscoe is going to make the presentation, so she'll get started now.
Good evening. We have owned this house since 2013 at 1,300 square feet. It is a small house for the neighborhood, but we considered it to be good enough for the two of us. After living in the house for a couple of years, we realized that we need to make some changes to make the house more comfortable for us and to allow us to age in place. Basically, we wanted to add a small master bedroom, bath, and laundry room to bring the laundry room from the basement where it is currently placed. So approximately it will be an addition of 700 square feet. From the beginning, we wanted a ranch house because I have a bad knee on which I had 3 surgeries, and stairs and steps are not my best friends. So we wanted to keep the house on one level. Therefore, we began working with an architect at the beginning of 2018. And we worked for a couple of months on the design, and we completed it in the fall of 2018. We showed the design to Mr. Bridger in September, and he deemed it attractive, a good civic design. We waited to find a builder who would work within our budget, and therefore we resubmitted the plans only in February 2019. At that time, we were told that the zoning code was changed on November 19, 2018, and that our garage violates the new code. So, on this slide, on the left-hand side, you see the existing house plan, and on the right-hand side, you see the proposed plan. We specifically worked with the architect to avoid a complete demolition of the house, to have the least earth disturbance, and to address a few requirements that are important to us, such as a long-standing water drainage problem and install solar panels to have clean energy. Next one. The elevation drawings that you received show the modest and attractive addition that we are planning. The house is fitting the existing neighborhood aspect and style. Next one. This slide shows in white the position of the present garage. In orange, the position of the proposed garage. And as you can see, the new garage will be placed at the same depth from the street as the existing wing on the right. So we will preserve the same 40 feet setback from the street, as is the neighbor garage, for example, what you can see on the left-hand side. On our next door neighbor, the level of the garages will be the same.
Mrs. Rosca, quick question. Did you or your husband prepare this slide?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, yes. So what we are also showing on this slide is a problem that we have noticed ever since we moved into the house. So whenever there is a strong rainstorm, the water flows from the street onto our front yard and onto the driveway because of the topography of our land, and so far that issue has not been solved, but we propose to solve it through this project.
Of Riverside Drive. So water flows on Riverside, and due to the curvature enters exactly our property.
The water is flowing towards your existing garage now?
Yes, yes.
So, but your existing garage is going to come forward.
Yes.
To meet the water, what are you going to do to get it ready?
We'll get to that next slide.
Yes,
Next
we are
slide.
getting to that.
Next slide.
Okay, so actually on the next slide, we are showing the slope of the terrain that goes down from the front main door towards the garage. So it's a difference of elevation of more than 22 inches. On the photo in the middle, you can see an example of what is happening when there is a strong rainstorm, how the water flows on the street and comes into our driveway, which is right at the bottom of the photo. And also during the winter, that water freezes, and actually we have had visitors who slept and fell in front of that garage. So we plan to regrade a part of the front yard extending about 20 feet from the front line of the house. And also we plan to elevate the garage and driveway and to put drains and pipes underground and direct them towards dry wells.
And the water will go, where will the water go?
Into the dry well?
Into a dry well?
Yeah.
In the front or around the back?
Right now we have one already in the front, but we'll have in the back as well. Okay, so on the next slide, we show how the contractor that we have already contacted to install the solar panels on the roof has planned to do that. And in order to maximize the number of solar panels, the roof solution that is shown there will allow us to install the maximum number that is permissible. Okay, next slide. So on this slide, we are showing how our plan to have the new position of the garage fits into the neighborhood character. So as the arrows point out, those are our three adjacent neighbors, where you can see in the close-up photos that the garages are either leveled with the facade plane or stick up a little bit in front. So this is our next door neighbor, who is also here in the room. Then the neighbor in front of us, and there's one more neighbor a little bit in front and to the left.
Mrs. Roscoe, did you take these photos or your husband took them?
They are from Google Earth.
Okay, do you know how recent they are? Or is it your testimony they're accurate?
Yes, they
Yeah,
look
okay.
exactly like they look right now, yes. So we wrote a personal letter to all our neighbors to let them know about the project, and we have received no objections. Actually, tonight we have here our next door neighbor, and we thank you for coming. So what we did, we have explored our neighborhood, and on a small radius, we have found many houses with a U-shape. On this slide, we are showing a small sample of those houses.
These are all from Riverside Drive. And they point out the U shapes of the houses.
And these are from Google too?
Yes.
These are from Google Maps
Okay.
too, yes.
Yeah, so, next slide. So we propose to acknowledge the new ordinance by using matching siding material on the garage door to make the garage blend with the rest of the house and make the garage feel more inconspicuous. So, in conclusion, we believe that our design has no negative impact on the neighborhood while bringing a couple of benefits, such as good design, minimal earth disturbance, saving the house from a tear down, solving a long-standing drainage problem, bringing in solar energy. Thank you for your attention.
So from the testimony, I got one smile when I saw that they had the plans all drawn up in September and showed them to Derek, and it wasn't his fault, but 2 months later, all the work was made non-conforming with the ordinance change. And so that's sort of a C1, practical difficulty type problem. I feel more comfortable presenting this as a C2, where the solving of the flooding or drainage problem and the installation of solar panels are two of the purposes of zoning that are specified in the MLUL. It's a de minimis situation. I don't think there are too many more people who had their plans drawn during 2018 and went to build in January of 2019. It's not a situation which I think will recur, but it's also de minimis, and I think they've given thought to this and have tried to minimize the visual impact of the garage door by making it of the same materials as the siding of the house per se. So it's just an unusual case, and we hope you'll understand the problem that they faced.
I'd like to just say that I think I applaud what you did, and I think the zoning board, or the change in the garage zoning rules was trying to get more at tear downs and rebuilds than it is to make adjustments to your house. And I think the fact in that neighborhood, the whole Riverside neighborhood is ripe with tear downs these days, that the modest change you're making to your existing house should be applauded, assuming you're not going to do it and then tear it down in a year or two. But thank you for that.
Members of the public, would you like to say something? Member of the public?
So I
Sir, first, could you state your name and address for the record?
My name is Biao Luo. I live on 257 Riverside Drive.
Alrighty, and then if you would raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm any testimony you give this evening will be truthful?
Yes.
Thank you.
To be honest with you, I received this kind of letter this weekend. So I had a kind of different expectation because I saw several houses on Riverside Drive kind of actively being kind of rebuilt and tear down. So that's the reason I came here, just to see what's happening. And even though we kind of, as neighbors, we had some small issues, but I'm happy to see the kind of reasonable plan to keep the kind of character in the neighborhood. So I can applaud their effort to be consistent with the neighborhood characteristics. So I'm kind of happy with the plan. So we are the family that have the probably biggest impact with this development. So I kind of communicate with my wife, and both of us kind of happy with this plan. We don't have any objections.
Thank you. Seeing no one else, I guess the public session is closed. Would you like to say anything?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Comments?
I agree with what was previously said. I think that the impetus for the change in the zoning was to get around some of those tear downs and some of those, snub, whatever you call them, snub houses, and this certainly doesn't have that kind of effect. I think that drive around the neighborhood, it does look much more in the character of the neighborhood and not tearing a house down and putting up a not so appropriate house. This is a much better solution, so I would vote for it.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree with that statement. The tough part about character is when neighborhoods aren't consistently one character, and you have adequately pointed out other houses that are U-shaped, but also the zoning change was, I think, to prevent one snub nose coming out. There is an existing one, and it actually balances. And it's interesting also that the existing snub doesn't count as frontage. And I understand it doesn't have the door in it or whatnot, but it's, so I don't have a problem with it. It's, I think it looks better when you, and it doesn't violate the front setback or anything, or any of the setbacks. It's a very modest home relative to the zone.
I agree with Mr. Floyd. I think your slide that's up now, by placing this addition to the front, it's more consistent in terms of setback with the other houses, plus the fact that you've, in doing this type of addition with the garage and the bedroom behind it, looking at the existing house, you really don't have enough land on that side to approach the garage from the side. And so I think this is a good solution. I think it's more consistent with the neighborhood than the house that currently exists. And I do obviously like the idea, as other board members have said also, you're not tearing it down. So, and there's no reason to. So.
I agree.
Any other comments, please?
Yeah, just one comment. I think the fact that the setback is 40 feet really diminishes any violation of the neighborhood character ordinance, as opposed to if it was right up against the minimum front yard setback.
Very true, yes. Okay, does somebody want to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second? Okay. Any comments, any other statements?
I made a motion to approve.
Who said? Floyd. Mr. Floyd, yeah.
No, I didn't say.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, did anybody? Who seconded? Did any?
Second, I will second.
Okay, good. Okay. All right.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Coulson?
Yes.
Mr. Davich?
Yes.
Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Shriver?
Yes.
Mr. Vavanis?
Yes.
Ms. Ferone Lambrose?
Yes.
Thank you, is approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Steve, before we adjourn, can I ask a question?
Please.
Where do we sit on the lawsuit for the,
Right,
oh,
no, okay, when we, if everybody wants to hang around, which I'd like you to hear this, can we do this? I'd like to, when the public leaves, we can talk about it.
Should I give you a copy of this presentation?
You can email it. Thank you.
Yeah, just, if you can hang on for a minute, we're just going to talk about this.
Okay, so we need a motion to go into closed session. We need a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of discussing pending litigation with respect to Sunrise Development versus the zoning board.
Okay.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. We'll wait till,
Let's just wait a second and then we'll do this. To keep it for your taxes.
and so what they're trying to do is say that it can't work out.
Yeah, it's a good solution. You know, maybe they'll make it work. I think they'll make it work. Yeah. I think they'll decide whether or not they'll go to the top.